This is the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berbejillo. Today, I am joined by Farz, an engineer, entrepreneur, and former big tech leader who spent his career at the intersection of product engineering and innovation. In this episode, we explore Farz's current work and what's motivating him as a founder today. We talk about his transition from big tech to entrepreneurship, the hype versus reality around AI, and the sustainability of VC-subsidized business models. Farz brings a thoughtful, grounded perspective to topics like the future of work, how AI is reshaping software development, and what technical founders often get wrong early on. Stick around, this one is packed with insight. Farz, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for reaching out, Mateo.
I appreciate it. Let's start with today. What are you currently building or working on, and what's the problem you are aiming to solve?
Yeah, so I'm running Sonic Infra. We're basically we consider it a new cloud provider. The idea is a lot of customers, a lot of not just customers, like a lot of engineering companies, they pay for CI/CD and internal infrastructure in the same way that they pay for production environments. And the fact of the matter is, what you pay for your production environments, what you get for that is much more than what you need for CI/CD and internal infrastructure. For instance, you don't care how many time zones it's in, how many, you don't need a CDN, you don't need load balancers, all that sort of stuff for, internal manual QA, because very rarely do you even need more than one like server for an entire environment, let
Right.
alone do you need it to be distributed across multiple availability zones and all that sort of stuff that just doesn't matter. And so what happens is people are paying 5 to 6 times as much as they need to for CI/CD. And a lot of companies they do this until they're a certain size. They're paying about 100 grand or more, and then they flip a big switch and they run their own servers, locally or using colocation or something. But it's this big switch, and now there's like a part of your org that does something very different from everyone else. And so we're trying to solve that problem so that customers can either switch earlier, so while the costs are in the tens of thousands, they can switch earlier because they don't need that separate organization. They don't need to justify a whole headcount. They can just get the lower prices right away. Um, or if you are someone who has that part of your organization that you're like, I don't know how to manage these people. How do I track their output? Like all that sort of stuff that happens when you have a essentially a silo within your organization, because all they do is run servers. Everyone else writes software. These people, replace hard drives. Like, what does that even mean?
Right.
So if you're in that position or you're about to do that, we help people skip that step, skip having that whole separate org, and they instead uh, outsource that to us. We run basically a cloud or a private cloud, depending on what the customer wants, at much closer to the cost it would take to just run it in colo yourself, but
Got
without
it.
salary, overhead, management, all that stuff that comes with it.
Very good, very clear. Let's talk a little bit about your story. You had a successful career in big tech. What made you decide to step out and become an entrepreneur? What was the transition like for you personally and professionally?
Yeah, so I spent about 5 years at Google, actually across two stints. So actually, I quit Google twice.
Okay.
And uh, the main thing there is I always felt out of place at big tech. I grew up, my parents ran their own businesses, um, and I always felt like, okay, like I want to be more impactful. And at Google, I was always like doing this like this small thing of this small project of this medium-sized project of and like technically I worked on Google search. That sounds cool, but like what did I do? I basically implemented a new templating language in C++ and Java for the main search pages, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, And then what did I do? I didn't write the template engine, right? I did this small part of that.
Right.
And then I moved on to Glass, thinking, that was a small project at the time. This is 2011. And I had much more impact there, but still a small part of a team doing a small part of the overall thing. And kind of saw the writing on the wall with Glass. And so about 6 months before they imploded, this is Google Glass for people who are not familiar. In 2012, we were the hype of the town. 2013, it silently died. Um, and or not silently if you were in the space. Um, yeah, so I saw the writing on the wall and left to do my own enterprise software startup that I didn't realize was enterprise software. That was the one of the mistakes I made. I treated it like consumer software and approached customers and approached sales, the wrong way. And once I actually did approach customers, they told me like they don't care about the problem I'm solving. Because I saw the problem, I saw it on the manufacturing line when I was at Glass. Like I visited our manufacturing lines in San Jose, and I was, building software for that. They didn't care. They had bigger problems, bigger fish to fry, and I realized like, oh, actually, I did the typical, like now I realize like that's the typical engineering thing is to like solve a problem that you see before talking to anyone who actually might care about that problem. And you just like build a solution. And I didn't build the full solution. I built a simulation of the solution and then realized, oh, actually no one's going to buy this. So I went back to Google X. This time what became Waymo, they called themselves Chauffeur at the time. Technically, that's a secret, but it's an open secret. Everyone calls it knows that it was Chauffeur. And yeah, I was there for about 2 years. I led the team that I had been a part of on Glass. But again, small impact in a small team, small, etc. And I f I was approached by the one of the co-founders of Applied Intuition, to join there as the second engineer. And yeah, I did that. And I was there for about 5.5 years. However, they got into defense work. I didn't want to be in defense work, so I left that. And I've done very small things since then, small companies. Yeah.
It's an amazing story. And how does it feel when you get out of the big tech and you go on your own, and you start having that impact that you want to have, right? And you start, working on the whole thing. Um, how does that feel for you?
I I don't want to quit every day. That's a big difference. At Google, you're always like, oh, how long am I going to be here? And every time I quit, I had a tough conversation with my dad,
Right.
who said, why do you leave this? Like he roughly knew my salary, he knew my equity, and he knew how little I made running my own stuff. So that was always like a reason to stay. I'm a son of an um, immigrant family, so they always had that pressure of like, we came
Yep.
here for you to do well. Why are you not doing well in their definition? Um, Oops. Okay, Google thought I was talking to them. Um, and yeah, so sorry, I lost track of the
No
question.
worries. So feeling the feeling of, okay, so you transitioned and
Mhm.
the first thing is you didn't want to quit every day, but you still had your parents not
Yeah,
understanding why you were making the change. And
yeah. I mean, running your own thing, or being part of a small team, which is what I was at Applied Intuition initially. That there's a huge satisfaction to get from like you are delivering a real feature that a real customer is using. We were talking to those customers. I'm talking to customers of Sonic Infra. And so that like more direct feedback is always
right.
better. Like at Google, unless you basically want to get fired, like you don't talk to customers.
Mhm.
At least not as an engineer. There's these like multiple layers of separation. Whereas at a smaller company, at a startup or small business, you have to talk to your customers. Like
Right.
there's no business without those customers. There's no job. Um, and that has like this profound change in not only the satisfaction of the job, but also the what you want to do. Because you want those customers to like what you're building, and so you talk to them about what their problems are, what pains they have, etc., and you try to fix those things. And the engineer in you and me really wants to like be a problem solver.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're at big tech, you're solving what someone else tells you is a problem, but you don't know like how closely that is a problem. Um, Whereas at like a small business, like you're talking to the customer who like not only says it's a problem, then when you fix it, then they tell you, oh hey, you fixed it, or hey, you didn't fix it. Uh, I wish you fixed it this other way, and then you can iterate with them. But when you do that with at at Waymo, like what problem was I solving? Taxi drivers are expensive, I guess. I don't know. Like
Right.
it
Right.
didn't seem to be quite a problem at the time. Uber was VC subsidized, as we'll get into. But yeah, so like you have a much more direct sense of accomplishment.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk a little bit around AI. There's a lot of buzz around AI, right? How much of what's being promised do you think it's real, and how much is hype or marketing?
I think if you're paying attention, you can see the parts um that are real, that but they're not hype. Like it's not as interesting to say we will make software engineers or lawyers or all sorts of other desk jobs. We're going to make them this much more productive, anywhere between 10 to 100% more productive. That's not as hype as saying we will replace.
Right.
Um, and I think we've come to this point where, I think GPT-5 just came out like this last week. And so everyone is looking at it, and some people are super hyped, like, oh, it's so amazing. And others are realizing, well, actually, it's an iteration on GPT-4, but we were told we'd have AGI by this time. What's going on? Can there be an AGI? Um, and I think if it's all definitions. We ran into this at Waymo and then applied intuition about autonomy. What does it mean to have a fully autonomous system? What does full self-driving really mean? And I think we're running into the exact same thing happening with AI. What does it actually mean to have a general purpose AI model? And and people will define it one way and sell it another way.
Right.
And they'll say, okay, we're going to have this AGI that replaces all human labor. And then in reality, what they're actually selling is we'll have this great AI model that will make a lot of jobs a lot more productive.
Right.
But will it remove those jobs? Yes and no, depending on the industry. Like, is there an actual fixed demand for those jobs? I would say in 2012, for instance, which was really the last time I did a very difficult job search, uh, there was much higher demand than there was a supply for software engineers, or
Right.
just anyone who could code. This is why like boot camps came out, like all these sorts of things of just trying to get you right over that hump of like what is a for loop, and then you could get a job. I mean, that's very generalizing. I'm sorry to anyone out in boot camp, but like I have quite a few friends who went through boot camps, but they really were just like, here's a for loop, here's a map, here's this, go get a job. And no, not everyone did, but the the point being like there was this huge demand, and like AI is essentially increasing the supply by making the supply more productive. You can do more stuff. You need fewer people to do the same job. That's just like with how a cash register made um, tellers more productive, and grocery store is more productive. It didn't remove the need for someone to put the groceries in a bag until more recently. But even then, if you look at the self-checkout registers, there's still someone there because
Yeah.
people get lost, people make mistakes. You can't always do the thing that you want. You try to get a gift card, and someone has to come and verify that. Well,
Yeah.
who is that? Okay, so you still need a thing, but now it's four checkout lanes per one person versus one to one. And before it used to be, two or three to one checkout lane. So that's the increasing productivity. But we're not getting to a point where there will be no employees in a grocery store.
Yeah.
And same with that, we're not getting to a point where there will be no software engineers at a software company. We're getting to a point where you don't need to be a great software engineer to run a basic software company, and you don't need that many. But we're not getting to a point where I think someone was saying like at NVIDIA, someone asked, will one day NVIDIA be just Jensen Huang talking to a bunch of computer like agent AI agents? Um, so that was a legit question asked at an all hands, or I don't know what they call them at NVIDIA. And that's not what we're near, and that's not what is going to happen uh, with AI. But you're going to see basically supply and demand is not going to be the way it was. And engineers, we had a long stretch, 20, 30 years of much more demand than supply. And so there's going to be a bit of reckoning. Um, but it's not just a supply and demand change. There's other things that have been really messing with the job market of engineers. Um, yeah, like we've been talking about uh, VC subsidized startups. There's some IRS tax code stuff that changed since 2017.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get into that. That's a great segue. So VC subsidized startups have been shaping entire markets, right? How do you view the long-term sustainability of companies built on subsidization rather than clear business fundamentals?
So let's define that just so people know, because people, depending on what region they're in, what market they have interacted with, they may not know. But if you're in the U.S. Or large parts of the world, even for maybe about 5, 10 years, Uber was much cheaper than a taxi. So, and there were places where you couldn't get a taxi, but in the places where you could get a taxi or an Uber or a Lyft, Uber was always cheaper, and Lyft was also roughly the same price. And somehow, everyone thought that meant that's how like efficient Uber was.
Yeah,
Um, but in reality, what was happening was Uber and Lyft were losing money on every ride.
right.
There was a delta between what they were paying the drivers and the cost of various things, and what the passenger was paying. Uh, and that's called sub, VC subsidization. And you can see that in a ton of stuff. Instacart did it. Basically, all the grocery delivery stuff did it for a while. DoorDash, etc. Um, Waymo is still doing it. If you actually are using a Waymo, you're not paying the full cost of the capital of that car, etc., etc. All the engineering that went into it, you're not paying that yet. Um, and everyone will see who's dealt with these companies knows like at some point in the past 5 years, DoorDash went from being cheap to actually kind of expensive. Um, Uber and Lyft went from being cheap to actually, should I do that? Airbnb went from cheap to why am I doing this? A hotel is cheaper and I get a free maid. Um, and it's like, oh, actually, turns out when the VC subsidies go away, the product is actually not that great. Like literally, Airbnb is in most cases it's worse. In some cases, there's some like rare things you get, nice experiences, or you get a house near something that the hotel would be farther away from. Uh, but vast majority of the use of Airbnb for a long time was a hotel but cheaper. Uh,
Right.
And then like the cleaning fees started becoming a thing, and then all these fees, and then the prices went up, and everyone realized like actually why is that this is so expensive? What the heck? Um, and same with Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and Instacart and all of them. And the VC subsidies went away because these companies went public, or they want to go public, or they're going to go public soon. And you can't go public with VC subsidies because you're just melting money away. And then Uber basically to become a profitable business had to raise their rates above taxis. It's actually more expensive than if you just got a taxi.
Yeah.
So we did all of this stuff. They broke all the rules. They broke a lot of laws. They changed some laws through basically public bribery, and just to make taxis worse. It's better you can use an app instead of having to go find them.
Yeah.
But taxi companies have apps now.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing, and sometimes you don't even realize it, right? And I see it everywhere. It's like posts about DoorDash, etc. And why is it so expensive? It's crazy. Let's talk about the growing concern among founders and engineers around Section 174 of the IRS code, especially how R&D and software development are treated for tax purposes. What's your perspective on this issue?
So I think it changed. For years, uh, Section 174, for people who are not familiar, the IRS tax code said, I think it was passed in the first Tax Cuts and Jobs Act under Trump. It said research and development has to be amortized over 5 years. You cannot, in the year that you pay for R&D, you cannot write it off fully as an expense. And that was always the case. But in under T, TJ and TCNJ, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they changed that to include software development as R&D. And so if you had 5 engineers, and you paid them 100 grand each, or at least your expenses were 100 grand each, you suddenly went from being able to write off 500 grand to only being able to write off 100 grand. And you had to pay taxes on the 400 grand if if you were a profitable business, or if you were less than 400 grand from profitability, you suddenly had to pay more taxes than you had to before. And for startups, that's not really a problem. They're not really profitable. But for a lot of small businesses, and a lot of medium businesses, Google, etc., as well, they had this huge tax bill that they were not planning for because this took people by surprise. Obviously it didn't take Google by surprise that these things existed because the accountants knew, but it took them by surprise that it did not get repealed because every 3 months people were talking, it's going to get repealed, it's going to get repealed. And it didn't until this year. So for about 5 years, I think, it was you had to amortize. And I think this year they changed it retroactively. So everyone's going to go back, change all their stuff, get a bunch of tax money back. Um, but that was a lot of chaos, as people may be aware. To imagine your tax bill goes up for 5 years and then goes down for the exact same operations, let alone all the other operation changes that went on during COVID, during the ups and downs of that market. And so a lot of people will remember, hey, in 2021, 2022, after the huge job gains in 2020 that like Facebook and Google all did, thinking like because of COVID, the population is just going to go online, and e-commerce and all these things are going to go up and stay up, which was short-sighted of them. They did that, and then suddenly they started cutting all these jobs. And part of the reason for that was actually they were paying ginormous tax bills, and not just Facebook, Meta, Google, etc. It was like Airbnb, like all these companies were facing these ginormous tax bills that they were just not ready for, and they thought they were just going to get retroactively fixed, et cetera, and they just started shedding employees instead. Um, Other things affected that, zero interest rate phenomenon ending and all that, but Section 174 was a big one. And I think last I spoke with someone, I personally am not dealing with that just yet. We'll have to deal with that at the end of the year. But I spoke with someone who dealt with it in the past few years, and they're very excited to get their tax bill back.
Amazing. And so based on everything that we are discussing, right? The impact of AI, the impact of overhiring during COVID, and then a correction, the impact of VC subsidized startups, and that's it doesn't seem to be happening as much. Maybe happening on the AI side. Um, Will you say your view on the software engineer career and hiring being more like a reckoning, like you said, basically now we are asking more of developers because we know they can be more productive and we are not anymore at that point in time where you could just know a little bit and you could get a job, but that's not necessarily bad, right? It's more like a an adjustment of the market. Will you call it that way? What are your thoughts on the future, like what the market looks like today and how it's going to look like in the future?
There, I mean, anytime there's a massive change, there's always going to be adjustments, and it's going to take some time for people to realize the benefits and the shortcomings of AI. I think a lot of people think the AI that we're going to have is actually going to replace jobs. Um, what I'm seeing is more, for a couple of years, myself and others were like, oh, it's an okay intern, and what that means is you have to oversee the AI. Uh, if I give a senior engineer a task, I expect it'll get done. I don't really have to check in that often. Maybe if I the project manager, I want to know timelines and stuff, but it'll get done, it'll work, and they'll get the code reviewed and all that. With an intern, you give them a task, and then every 15 minutes, you have to check, hey, did you do the thing? What did you do? What are you up to? Are you still working on it? Did you get distracted? Are you going down the wrong path? Why are you using threading? This is all these, you have to really get in the weeds. And AI, for a long time, was that. And it still kind of is like that. Um, you can get a little bit further along with like some agentic use cases, but it still requires, except for very mechanical things, it still requires oversight. So some things can be automated that couldn't be before, like operations can be automated using AI, but you still want a human in the loop for egregious to catch egregious errors. Um, so I don't think it's fully replacing jobs. It's, making people more productive because reviewing is usually faster than writing. Um, However, there's going to be a reckoning in the next 5 years where um, if you, if you, as a company, you got rid of internships and maybe even entry-level positions because, hey, AI can do that work. Um, well, how do you get senior engineers? At some point, I was an entry-level engineer. At some point, I was an intern. At some point, I was, you know, not even good enough to be an intern. So what do you do to me? And, not just me, like the next engineer, how do you get them to be a senior engineer who can review the code and knows the pitfalls that you can run into? You like, there's going to be something going on. And one thing I think that might change is for a very long time, software engineering as an industry got away with no on-the-job training. Um, if you, this actually kind of blew my mind because I thought this was normal. And then I talked to some other people who got hired by like Oracle or like other things doing other stuff. And they're like, yeah, I'm in my training. It's like, you got hired like 2 weeks ago. Or, like, work? What do you mean you're training? Like, oh yeah, I got 2 more weeks of training. I'm at headquarters doing training. And I was like, wow, like engineers, we get like 3 days. And then it's like, where's your PR? Where's your pull request? Where's your code change? Um, and so I think what's going to have to happen is, well, if you're hiring people who haven't done that in the past, who haven't done engineering, etc., you're going to have on-the-job training. And so it's going to be even more expensive to hire an engineer. Maybe the wages might not be as high, but the onboarding and offboarding is going to be expensive, just like it is in a lot of other industries, a lot of other careers.
Thank you. I appreciate that insight. Fars, you operated at the intersection of engineering, product, and leadership. What lessons have you learned that you wish more technical founders or builders knew early on?
There's a lot of stuff that maybe it's because I'm in this space more now. It seems everyone knows about it now, but when I started, it wasn't obvious, and so uh, maybe it's not obvious to people. No, it's hard to know if I'm just like in my echo bubble. Um, but one of the things is like you should have customers before you have a product, which is really hard as an engineer to like resist that urge to build. 'Cause we're like that's what we do, we build. But you don't want to like for hobbies and stuff, it's fine. Just build a thing that only you're going to use. Um, and often some products are products that they built it for themselves and then other people wanted it too. But if you're actually trying to go out and build a product, not just something for yourself, you have to first make sure uh, that you are actually a user of it. And if you're not, you need to have users of it uh, in the loop. I've I did some stuff myself. I've talked with a lot of other early founders who they built stuff that they weren't the user of, and they didn't talk to customers. I know of one social media company, for instance, that they not only were not social media addicts, they barely used social media, and the one person who was using their product, no one reached out to them. They had one person on the social media network, no one talked to them. And I was like, you should have had a weekly session with this lady that is like posting about her. It was like a event thing, so she was posting about some knitting group I think she had. And maybe that was sexist. Maybe that's what she actually did. I don't remember exactly what she did. But they didn't talk to her. I was like, what's her name? And they're like, we don't remember. It's like she put her full name on the website. Your database is not that hard, not that big. Doctor. And they're not the only case. That's just a very egregious case of um, of stuff. So if you're building based on theory, then you're going to be in a position where you could get extraordinarily lucky if all the signs align. But I don't consider myself lucky. I think most people are not lucky. That's the definition of lucky. And so if you want to defeat luck as an arbiter, then you need to remove its power. And so you have to talk to customers and talk to users, talk to everyone and see, before, is this something that they would use? And then once you have something that's usable, not MVP, just proof of concept. Be like, hey, would you use this? And if someone's like, hey, I want this, like give it to me, even though it's, mostly broken or only a little bit works, that's a sign that you should build this. But if people are like, oh, if only it did X, Y, and Z, then uh, you know, maybe they don't care. Uh, and take that as a sign of like that's not actually a real pain point that they have. That's just um, a lot of people are interested in a lot of things, but what are you actually going to pay attention to? What are you going to pay for? What are you going to spend real time like migrating to? Uh, that that has to be something important to them.
I love that insight, and it's so important right now in a world where we can vibe code our way into building whatever we dream of. It seems like there's going to be a lot of products that nobody asked for that have no use, and right. And so talk to customers first, talk to humans, learn what their pain points are, and if you are really building something that they need or not. Right? I love it.
Yeah. Especially in the world where someone can, like you said, vibe code, 3 paragraph text and get an app that does roughly what they want, then you have to give them something above that. Because if it's like, oh, I'm just going to re-implement Duolingo, like the first version of Duolingo, AI can do that today. So even Duolingo is going above and beyond, and they're adding stuff that like I can't just have an AI do for me. Um, but that's what you're going to have to do is um, and if the barrier to entry has lowered, you need to find something where there's a higher barrier of entry and that you have something of value there. I think one thing, maybe not just to entrepreneurs, or just to young people in general, there's a lot of scammers out there that are like, you could do this easy thing and make this huge amount of money. And I think the easy way to debunk that is like, why me versus anyone else? And if it could be anyone else, why don't they do it? If it doesn't take a high school degree, if it doesn't take a college degree, if it doesn't take a particular degree, or it doesn't take a particular amount of experience, or whatever, a certain amount of capital, whatever it is, what do you bring to the table that someone else doesn't? And if you bring nothing to the table that someone else cannot bring, then it's probably a scam. Or a lot of these MLM, multi-level marketing things, they're all just like, oh yeah, pay $100 or whatever a month, and you can become this great person. And most people don't make money because most people are not good salespeople. Good salespeople are good, and if you're a good salesperson, go ahead. But I'm not. You should know your own skills and weaknesses. And if you're not a good salesperson, don't fall for things that want you to be a good salesperson. Or if you're not a good engineer, don't fall for things that are only beneficial to good engineers, or just whatever it is. There's no such thing as a high school level a job that only requires a high school degree that makes you a millionaire in a year. There's no such thing, because if that was the case, all of America would be millionaires. Um, so just, why is that not the case? Why is that not the case for you? You should consider your own skills and weaknesses.
Very sound advice. I love it. And I see that all the time in LinkedIn. It drives me crazy. And it's like you said, why if it's so easy, why are you selling this instead of just doing it yourself and getting rich, right? So
Yeah,
first,
day
one
trading is
last,
that big one. It's like
it
I
doesn't make
turned
sense.
$1,000 into $1 million. I'm like, then go retire. Why are you talking to me?
Yeah. Why are you
Do it
why
twice.
are you asking people to say a word on your LinkedIn feed so you can sell them whatever,
Yeah,
blah blah blah, right? So
exactly.
one last question to you, Fars. Outside of work and startups, what keeps you grounded? What do you enjoy doing when you're not thinking about technology? Or is there a time where you're doing something else than technology?
A year ago, I would have told you I am a nerd. All I do is think about technology and work on that. If I'm not working on it, it's something for my hobbies. I write scripts randomly for no reason. I I just had a boy, my first kid, a couple months ago. He's a cutie, and so that's what I think about when I'm not thinking about technology is that, or sometimes I have him here and I continue to work while he babbles into my ear.
So you are in that very crazy spot of maybe not sleeping much, or maybe you are. I don't know. It depends on
No.
each parent. But but the one thing I will tell you is sleeping a nap with him. Like right now, he fits here, right? And
Yeah,
he
perfectly.
fits perfectly. And then you both can sleep. And there's like a weird thing going on where you're like heartbeat and and you
Yeah.
feel his heartbeat. And it's amazing. Dude, that goes by so fast, so fast. Enjoy it. I'm happy for you. Enjoy it.
Thank
It's an
you.
amazing time of life.
I'm probably gonna take one of those dual naps later today. He didn't let us sleep last night, so we're gonna have to make
You
it up
need the
today.
nap. You need the nap. Very good. Fars, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. I hope that we can do this again sometime in the future. I appreciate you and thank you for sharing so much knowledge with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me, Mateo. Good to talk to you, and hope we meet again.